The old research ship creaked as it moved through the empty sector of space. Professor Reed stood at the main viewport, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the darkness ahead. His gray skin reflected the dim light of distant stars, while his thin fingers tapped against the metal railing with excitement. "Professor, you're wasting your time," said First Officer Miller from his station. "This sector has been searched 100 times. There's nothing here but space dust and broken dreams." Reed ignored the comment. After 20 years of searching forgotten corners of space, he had learned to trust his instincts. The ancient star charts he discovered in the ruins of the Centauri outpost had to mean something. His crew might think he was chasing fairy tales, but Reed knew better. The ship's sensors beeped softly. Reed's lower eyes widened while his upper ones narrowed, a sign of intense focus among his species. "There," he said, pointing at a cluster of readings. "Mass concentrations ahead. Large ones." Miller sighed but did his job, adjusting their course. As they drew closer, the ship's lights revealed something that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Floating in the darkness was a massive ship, its hull dark with age. Then another became visible, and another. Soon they could see dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, stretched out in a perfect formation. "By the stars," whispered Miller. "It's a fleet." Reed's hands shook as he ordered the scan teams to begin their work. The ships were huge, easily twice the size of modern battlecruisers. Their design was unlike anything in known space. Angular, practical, with none of the smooth curves and aesthetic touches common to modern vessels. The initial scans confirmed what Reed's eyes told him. These ships were old. Very old. The hull material showed signs of at least 15,000 years of space exposure. Yet somehow they remained intact, preserved in the cold void. "Look at the construction," laughed one of the junior officers. "They used physical welding points, and the hull is made of processed metals instead of grown crystals. How primitive." Reed shot him a sharp look. "Primitive. These ships have survived 15 millennia in space. Our advanced ships need hull replacement every 50 years. He turned back to the viewport, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There's more here than we can see." Over the next few hours, the research team documented their find. They counted over 300 ships of various sizes, from small frigates to massive carriers. All showed signs of weapon mounts and heavy armor, but in designs that seemed hopelessly outdated by modern standards. When Reed sent his initial report to the Galactic Council, the response was quick and dismissive. Ancient relics, they called the ships. Interesting from a historical perspective, but nothing more. Some even suggested melting the fleet down for raw materials. But Reed couldn't shake the feeling that they were all missing something important. Why would someone build such a large fleet and leave it here, perfectly preserved? The positioning was too precise, the formation too perfect for this to be a graveyard of abandoned ships. In his small office aboard the research vessel, Reed studied the preliminary scans. The ship's power cores were cold but intact. The weapon systems, while appearing primitive, showed no signs of decay. Even the internal atmospheres had been preserved, sealed away by multiple redundant systems. This wasn't abandonment. This was storage. "Computer," he said, "analyze the symbol markings on the largest vessel's hull." The computer worked for several minutes. "Match found in historical archives," it finally reported. "Language identification. Human English alphabet, last used approximately 15,000 years ago." Reed sat back in his chair, all four eyes wide with shock. Humans, the supposedly primitive species that had vanished from known space before achieving significant interstellar travel. That was impossible. How could they have built something like this? As he stared at the fleet through his office viewport, Reed knew he had stumbled onto something far bigger than a simple archaeological find. The humans hadn't disappeared. They had left something behind. Something that had waited, patient and silent, for 15,000 years. He just had to figure out why. 3 months after the discovery of the ancient fleet, Professor Reed sat in his cramped office on the research station, surrounded by holographic displays showing news from across the galaxy. None of it was good. The Dominion had appeared from nowhere. Their ships, black as space itself, had already destroyed 5 border colonies. Modern defense fleets didn't stand a chance against their weapons. It was like they knew exactly how to counter every shield frequency, every defensive measure. "Professor," called Miller through the office door. "The Council wants another update on the fleet analysis." Reed nodded tiredly. For weeks now, he'd been studying the ancient ship's computer systems. Most of his colleagues had already left, convinced there was nothing of value to learn from such primitive technology. But something in the ship's weapon designs kept bothering him. "Tell them no change," he said. The systems remained dormant. But that wasn't entirely true. Last week, Reed had managed to access a small part of the main computer on one of the smaller ships. The data was encrypted, but what he could read worried him deeply. The door chimed again. This time it was Captain Walker, the station's military liaison. Her usual confident smile was gone. "Professor, you need to see this." She played a recording on his main screen. A modern battlecruiser, pride of the galactic fleet, faced off against a single Dominion vessel. The cruiser's advanced shields flared bright blue against the enemy's attack. Then, with a precision that seemed impossible, the Dominion ship fired a series of shots that slipped through gaps in the shield matrix that shouldn't have existed. The battlecruiser exploded. 3,000 crew members, gone in seconds. "How do they know?" Walker asked, her voice tight. "Every ship, every station. They know exactly where to hit us. It's like they've been studying our technology for centuries." Reed's lower eyes narrowed as he pulled up his research notes. "Or maybe," he said slowly, "they've used it before." He showed her the partial weapons data he'd decoded from the ancient ship. The targeting systems, though using older technology, were designed to exploit the exact same weaknesses the Dominion was using. "That's impossible," Walker said. "These ships are 15,000 years old. Our shield technology was developed less than a century ago. Unless," Reed's voice dropped to a whisper, "the humans knew this was coming." He pulled up more data on his screens. The fleet's formation wasn't random. It was a perfect defensive pattern. The weapon systems, while appearing primitive, had power ratings that made no sense for their size. And the armor, which everyone had laughed at for being made of processed metal, contained elements that modern science couldn't even identify. "The Dominion isn't using advanced technology against us," Reed said, his excitement growing. "They're using old technology. Very old. And the humans." He pointed at the ancient fleet floating outside their window. "They built these ships specifically to fight it." Walker stared at the fleet, then back at the footage of the destroyed battlecruiser. Why didn't they use these ships themselves? Why store them and disappear? Before Reed could answer, the station's alarms began blaring. On his screens, emergency reports flooded in. The Dominion had broken through the outer defense lines. They were pushing toward the core worlds. "How long?" Reed asked. "At their current pace. 2 weeks, maybe less, before they reach major populated systems." Reed looked at his research notes, then at the quiet fleet outside. Somewhere in those ships lay the key to fighting the Dominion. He was sure of it now. But with the Council still dismissing his work as a waste of time, how could he prove it? The station shook slightly as another research vessel docked. More scientists leaving, probably. Soon he'd be one of the few still studying these primitive relics. "Captain," he said finally, "how would you like to help me break about 50 Galactic Council regulations?" Walker looked at the battle footage again, then at the ancient fleet. A slow smile spread across her face. "Professor, I thought you'd never ask." The maintenance pod floated silently next to the largest ship of the ancient fleet. Inside, Professor Reed and Captain Walker stared at the massive hull before them, their helmet lights illuminating strange markings that had gone unnoticed during initial scans. "There," Reed pointed. "These aren't just random patterns. They're words." His fingers traced the faded letters. "Earth Fleet Ship Defender." Humanity's shield. Walker moved her light across more markings. Look at these numbers. They're dates, aren't they? Yes. Manufacturing date, launch date. And Reed paused, his four eyes widening. A countdown date. These ships weren't abandoned. They were left here on purpose, waiting for something specific. Their helmet radios crackled. Professor, Captain. Miller's voice was urgent. 3 Council enforcement vessels just entered the sector. They're demanding to know why you've accessed the restricted ships without authorization. Walker grimaced. How long do we have? 20 minutes, maybe less. Reed didn't waste time. He pulled out a data scanner and pressed it against the ship's hull. The humans weren't primitive. Look at these metal compounds. They're artificially created elements. The molecular structure is like nothing in our scientific database. The scanner beeped, showing more results. The power core isn't dead, it's in hibernation. And these weapon mounts, they're not outdated at all. They're just built differently, designed to channel energy in ways we've never considered. Walker studied the readings. These ships could fight the Dominion. Not could. Were built to. Reed's voice grew excited. The humans knew about the Dominion. Somehow, they knew they were coming. Everything about these ships. The weapons, the armor, even the computer systems. It's all designed specifically to counter Dominion technology. But how? The humans vanished 15,000 years ago. The Dominion only appeared 3 months ago. Reed connected his scanner to another part of the hull. Unless they didn't vanish. What if they left? What if they knew the Dominion was coming, but knew it would take thousands of years? The scanner suddenly lit up with new data. Encrypted files began flowing across their helmet displays. Technical specifications, battle strategies, and star charts, all written in ancient human languages. Professor, Miller's voice was panicked now. Council ships, 10 minutes out. Look at this. Walker pointed to a repeating pattern in the data. These aren't just technical specs. They're instructions. The humans left us a manual. Reed nodded. A manual, a warning, and a gift. He turned to face the massive ship. They knew their level of technology would seem primitive to us. Knew we'd ignore these ships because they didn't match our ideas of advanced engineering. That's exactly what they wanted. A hidden defense, Walker whispered, waiting for the right moment. Their helmet lights suddenly caught something else. A small panel, different from the rest of the hull. Reed pressed his scanner against it. The metal hummed beneath his touch. Captain, he said slowly, I think I just found the power switch. The entire ship shuddered. Lights, dark for 15 millennia, began to flicker to life along its hull. Inside, ancient systems awakened. Computers powered up, and weapons charged with a soft blue glow that looked far more advanced than anything their modern ships could produce. Professor, Miller again. The Council ships, they're picking up massive energy readings from the fleet. They're demanding an explanation. But Reed barely heard him. On their helmet displays, a new message had appeared, written in the same ancient human language they'd been studying. To those who find our fleet, if you're reading this, they'd finally returned. The Dominion destroyed our first civilization, forced us to flee our home galaxy. We spent centuries preparing, building this fleet, knowing they would eventually find us again. We couldn't stay. They would have detected us. But we left you these ships, our best technology hidden in plain sight, waiting for the day they returned. Use them well. And if you succeed, come find us. We'll be waiting. 5 minutes until Council ships arrive. Walker looked at Reed. Well, Professor, still think these ships are primitive. Reed smiled. Captain, I think it's time we show the Council exactly what these ancient relics can do. The Council chamber erupted in chaos. Emergency broadcasts from a dozen worlds played on the massive screens, showing Dominion ships cutting through defense fleets like paper. Professor Reed stood before the Council, his gray skin pale with exhaustion after 3 days without rest. You activated restricted artifacts without permission. Director Walsh shouted over the noise. Do you have any idea? A new alert cut him off. The Dominion had just destroyed another core world's defense fleet. Billions of citizens were now defenseless. The modern fleets aren't working, Reed said firmly. We've lost 60% of our combat ships in just 2 weeks. But the ancient fleet, that pile of scrap metal, Walsh laughed bitterly. Our most advanced ships can't stop them, but you think some relics will. Captain Walker stepped forward, playing a hologram from her datapad. It showed the ship they'd activated, the Defender, now humming with power that made their modern sensors struggle to comprehend. Watch, she said, playing the weapons test they'd conducted. The Defender's main gun fired a single shot. The energy beam shifted and twisted in ways that should have been impossible, completely ignoring the test target's shields. The council chamber fell silent. The humans who built these ships, Reed explained, they fought the Dominion before. They spent centuries developing weapons specifically to counter them. That's why our modern defenses fail. We're fighting an enemy that's seen all our technology before. Impossible. Walsh shook his head. The humans were primitive. They never even developed proper faster-than-light travel. The chamber's main screen suddenly flickered. A Dominion fleet had just appeared at the edge of the capital system. The automated defenses, the most advanced in known space, didn't even slow them down. We have no choice, Walker said. The ancient fleet is our only option. And what if activating those ships draws their attention? Walsh demanded. What if? The building shook. Through the chamber's crystal dome, they could see flashes of light in the sky. The Dominion had reached the capital. Reed's communicator beeped. It was Miller, still at the research station with the ancient fleet. Professor, the ships, they're all powering up. What? How? The Defender sent out some kind of signal when we activated it. The whole fleet is waking up. And Professor, you need to see these readings. The power levels, they're off the charts. On the council screens, the Dominion ships entered orbit. Modern defensive satellites exploded like toys before their weapons. The capital's shield grid, thought to be impenetrable, began to fail. Director Walsh, Reed's voice was steel. You can arrest me later. But right now, I have 300 warships that might be our only chance of survival. Are you going to keep arguing, or are you going to let me save your world? Walsh looked at the screens, then at the burning sky above. His shoulders slumped. Do it. Reed immediately contacted Miller. Send the activation codes we found. All of them. And get ready for emergency transport. I'm sending coordinates for the entire council. The chamber shook again. Outside, the first Dominion ships entered the atmosphere, their black hulls blocking out the sun. How long until the fleet can get here? Walker asked. Reed checked the data streaming from Miller. The ancient ships were moving, their engines glowing with that same impossible blue light. 12 minutes. The city shields will fail in 10, someone reported. Reed watched the Dominion ships descend, their weapon ports glowing. He thought about the human message they'd found. 15,000 years of waiting, planning, preparing for this moment. They'll hold, he said quietly. They have to hold. His communicator beeped again. Miller's voice was filled with awe. Professor, the fleet's AI just came online. It's requesting command authorization. Reed looked at Walker, then at the council. No one objected. Granted, he said. Full authorization. Above the capital, the sky turned black with Dominion ships. But far out in space, 300 ancient engines burned blue with power that hadn't been seen in 15 millennia. The humans' last gift to the galaxy was coming. The real question was, would it arrive in time? The capital's shields flickered and died. The Dominion ships descended through the atmosphere like dark stars, their weapons ready to fire. In the council chamber, Reed watched the tactical displays with growing dread. 9 minutes until total destruction. Then his communicator crackled. Professor, Miller's voice was filled with excitement. The fleet, It's not using normal dry systems. They're coming. The chamber's dome suddenly lit up with brilliant blue light. The ancient fleet didn't slowly descend from orbit. They simply appeared, 300 ships materializing around the city in perfect formation. The Defender, largest of them all, hung directly above the council building. Impossible, Walsh whispered. That's not hyperspace technology. They just jumped. Reed's datapad exploded with information as the fleet's systems fully activated. Not hyperspace, he said, reading quickly. The humans called it fold space. Their ships don't travel through space. They fold it. The Dominion ships paused their attack, clearly surprised by the sudden appearance of the ancient fleet. In that moment of hesitation, the Defender's AI spoke through every speaker in the chamber. Its voice was calm, almost gentle. Hostile forces detected. Dominion attack pattern confirmed. Activating defense protocols. The Defender fired first. Its weapons didn't shoot beams or projectiles. Instead, space itself seemed to twist around the Dominion ships. Their advanced shields, which had easily blocked modern weapons, did nothing against this attack. 3 Dominion ships simply ceased to exist. The space they occupied folded into nothing. By the stars, Walker breathed. That's why they were waiting. Modern shields, modern armor, they're all useless against weapons that changed space itself. The remaining Dominion ships regrouped, launching a counterattack. Their black energy weapons, so devastating against modern ships, splashed harmlessly against the ancient fleet's hulls. The Defender's eye spoke again. Hostile weapons signature analyzed. Matching records from human Dominion war. Activating countermeasures. More of the ancient ships opened fire. Each one used different weapons. Some twisted space. Others fired beams that phased through matter. And still others launched swarms of tiny drones that slipped through shield gaps no one had known existed. The humans, Reed said, understanding finally dawning. They didn't just build weapons to fight the Dominion. They built an entire arsenal of different technologies, knowing the Dominion would adapt to any single type of weapon. The battle above the capital was no longer a battle. It was a slaughter. The Dominion ships, for the first time, were the ones being torn apart. Their technology, so advanced by modern standards, meant nothing against weapons designed to counter their every strength. The Defender's eye continued its calm commentary. Dominion fleet at 30% strength. Beginning pursuit protocols. All civilian ships are advised to clear local space. The remaining Dominion ships tried to retreat, engaging their faster-than-light drives. But the ancient fleet was ready for this too. Space folded again, cutting off their escape routes. The human ships herded them like wolves hunting prey. In the council chamber, the tactical displays showed more ancient ships awakening across the galaxy, appearing near other Dominion attack sites. The message was clear. The humans hadn't just left behind a fleet. They'd left behind a full defensive network. Professor Miller's voice came through again. The fleet's databases are unlocking. There's so much here. Technological data, strategic information, star charts, and coordinates. Lots of coordinates. Reed's hands shook as he read the new data. These aren't random coordinates. They're locations, places where the humans left more ships, more weapons, more technology. All hidden, all waiting to be found when needed. Above them, the last Dominion ship vanished in a twist of folded space. The Defender moved lower, its massive hull gleaming in the sunlight. Its AI spoke one final time. Local space secured, beginning full defensive deployment. Warning, this is only the first wave. Primary Dominion fleet approaching. Estimated arrival, 6 days. Recommend immediate activation of all remaining human defense systems. Reed looked at Walsh, then at Walker. Well, he said with a slight smile, still think these ships are primitive. The council chamber was silent. Outside, 300 ships that had waited 15,000 years moved into defensive positions, ready to protect a galaxy that had once laughed at them. The real war was about to begin. Professor Reed hadn't slept in 3 days. The Defender's command center hummed around him as he worked through countless files in the ship's database. Captain Walker entered, carrying 2 cups of stimulant drink. "The Council wants another update," she said, handing him a cup. "The main Dominion fleet is 5 hours out." Reed nodded absently, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays. The ancient ship's computer had been slowly unlocking more information, revealing a story that seemed impossible. "Look at this," he pointed to a recording. "The humans didn't just fight the Dominion once. They fought them 3 times, across 3 different galaxies." The recording showed massive space battles, human ships fighting against familiar Black Dominion vessels. But these weren't the same ships now defending the capital. These were even more advanced. "I don't understand," Walker said. "If the humans had better ships, why leave these older ones?" Reed played another file. "Because the Dominion adapts. Each time humanity beat them, they came back stronger. These ships," he gestured around them, "they're not primitive. They're purposely designed to look and operate differently from anything the Dominion has seen before." More data flowed across the screens. Star charts showed the Dominion's path across multiple galaxies, hunting the humans from one world to another. Each time, humanity would fight, win, and then vanish. "That's why they disappeared from our galaxy," Reed whispered. "They knew the Dominion would follow them here eventually. So they left us weapons the Dominion wouldn't expect, couldn't prepare for." The ship's AI spoke up. "Correct, Professor Reed. Human tactical analysis predicted the Dominion would dismiss seemingly primitive technology, focusing their adaptations on countering expected technological advancement." Walker stared at the displays. "They sacrificed their place in this galaxy to protect it, left behind everything they built." "Not everything," Reed said, opening a new file. "Look at these power readings from the edge of known space. The humans didn't just leave. They're out there somewhere, hidden, watching, waiting to see if their plan worked." The command center's main screen lit up with a tactical display. The Dominion's main fleet was massive. Tens of thousands of ships approaching in attack formation. "Speaking of the plan," Walker said grimly, "we're about to see if it works. Those are more ships than the humans left us." Reed smiled. "Are they?" He entered a command sequence they'd discovered in the database. Across the galaxy, more ancient ships appeared. Not hundreds this time, thousands. They emerged from hidden bases in asteroid fields, rose from gas-giant atmospheres, phased through what had seemed to be solid planets. "By the stars," Walker breathed. "How many did they hide?" "Enough," the AI answered. Humanity calculated the exact number of ships needed to defeat a full Dominion invasion fleet. They then built triple that number, knowing some would be lost or destroyed before they were needed. New data streamed in as the hidden ships joined the defense network. Each vessel carried different weapons, different technologies, all designed to counter specific Dominion strategies. Final count, the AI reported 12,417 combat vessels activated, all systems nominal, standing by for combat. Reed looked at the tactical display again. The Dominion fleet approached, still confident in their superior numbers and technology. They had no idea they were flying into a trap 15,000 years in the making. "There's something else," Reed said quietly, showing Walker one last file. "After we win this battle, the fleet's final protocols activate. The ships will lead us to coordinates in deep space." "Coordinates where?" "Where the humans are waiting," Walker finished. "All this time, they've been out there, making sure their plan worked." The command center hummed as the ancient fleet moved into position. Weapons powered up, space folding drives ready to engage. 15,000 years of waiting were about to end. "Time to contact with Dominion fleet," Reed asked. 4 minutes, the AI responded. "All ships report ready." "Shall I begin the attack sequence, Professor?" Reed looked at Walker, then at the massive fleet of ships that had hidden for so long, protecting a galaxy that had mocked them. Yes, he said. Let's show them what primitive technology can really do. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and somewhere out in deep space, humanity watched, waiting to see if their children would finally earn the right to meet their ancestors. Space itself trembled as 12,000 human ships engaged the Dominion fleet. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia to come. The Dominion struck first, their black ships firing weapons that had devastated modern fleets. But the ancient human vessels simply folded space around the attacks, letting them hit nothing but empty void. Then they answered with their own arsenal. From the Defender's command center, Professor Reed and Captain Walker watched in awe. Each human ship used different tactics, different weapons. Some fired beams that phased through Dominion shields as if they didn't exist. Others released swarms of tiny drones that attached to enemy ships and folded space around small sections, cutting them apart piece by piece. Look at their formation. Walker pointed at the tactical display. The human ships aren't just fighting, they're hurting them. She was right. The ancient fleet moved in perfect coordination, forcing the Dominion ships into specific positions. Any enemy vessel that tried to escape found space itself twisted around them, blocking their retreat. Another gift from our ancestors, Reed said, reading new data from the ship's computer. They're using the Dominion's own attack patterns against them. 15,000 years ago, humanity memorized how they fight. The AI's calm voice filled the command center. Phase 1 complete. Dominion fleet containment achieved. Beginning Phase 2 of Battle Plan Echo. Suddenly, half of the human fleet vanished. Before Reed could ask what happened, they reappeared behind the Dominion forces. The trap was sprung. By the stars, Walker whispered, "They're not just winning, they're teaching us how to fight." The Defender's database was unlocking faster now, showing recordings of ancient battles, tactical analyses, and combat strategies. The humans hadn't just left weapons, they'd left a complete military doctrine designed to counter the Dominion. The enemy fleet began to break apart. Their notorious ability to adapt meant nothing against an arsenal specifically designed to counter every adaptation they'd ever developed. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for months vanished in twists of folded space or broke apart under weapons they couldn't understand. Dominion fleet at 30% strength, the AI reported. Beginning final phase. The remaining human ships moved into a new formation. Energy built up between them, creating a web of blue light. The Defender's systems showed what was coming, and Reed's eyes widened. "They're going to fold space around the entire Dominion fleet," he said in disbelief. "Not just small sections, all of it at once." The web of energy grew brighter. The Dominion ships tried desperately to escape, but there was nowhere to go. Humanity's ancient weapons had them completely surrounded. Fold space activation in 3, 2, 1. There was no grand explosion, no dramatic flash of light. The remaining Dominion ships simply ceased to exist. The space they occupied folded into nothing. The greatest invasion fleet in known history, defeated by technology they had dismissed as primitive. Silence fell over the command center. Then the AI spoke again, its tone somehow warmer than before. "Victory confirmed. All Dominion forces eliminated. Beginning transmission of final coordinates." New data appeared on Reed's screen. Directions to a location far outside known space. But there was something else too. A message, written in the same ancient human language they'd first found on the hull. "To our descendants, you've proven yourselves worthy of the legacy we left behind. The ships are yours now. Use them wisely. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. And if you're ready, come find us. We have so much more to teach you." Reed looked at Walker, then at Director Walsh, who had joined them during the battle. All their earlier arguments seemed meaningless now. "Well," Reed said with a smile, "shall we go meet our teachers?" The Defender's engines hummed as it turned toward deep space. Across the galaxy, thousands of ancient ships moved to protect the worlds they had hidden among for so long. And somewhere out there, Humanity waited to reunite with the civilization they had secretly guarded for 15,000 years. They had laughed at the ancient fleet until they realized humans built it. Now, no one was laughing anymore. Instead, they looked to the stars with hope, knowing that the people who had created such incredible machines were waiting to share even greater wonders. The next chapter of galactic history was about to begin, and this time, humanity would be there to guide them through it.